Welcome to the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sorelli. Humbled to have Harry Arnett on. You may have recognized Harry from Wall Street, where it depicted the launch of Municipal, which he is the co-founder and CEO, paired with Mark Wahlberg and Steven Levinson. But you guys launched right during the COVID pandemic, right?
Right in the middle of the damn thing. As a matter of fact, we when everything shut down in America, Mike, which was in March of 2020, we were about 60 days away from launching the business. So having our products on available for sale, a revenue generating moment that every startup looks for that moment when you are going to be starting revenue. Everything started shutting down in the middle of March. We lost all of our funding abruptly. So not even, hey, you got a month to figure it out. We had 3 days before we had to make payroll. And so everything shut down. And we were, you mentioned Wall Street. If you watch season 1, nothing like starting a business, going through all that, and getting the entire world to be able to see you standing on the edge of the cliff, looking out over the abyss.
Wait a second. So my wife and I binged on it when it came out, and we freaking loved it. But remind me, it just hit me as you're saying. So am I correct in remembering that? Because when the COVID hit, one of your major investors pulled out, right? They're like, hey,
they pulled out abruptly because we were the only startup that they had in their portfolio, which was, nice that they invested in us, and they had a long history with Mark, a lot of success with Mark, and with a lot of the businesses that he had, from F45 gyms to Wahlburgers to other things. And we were the only startup. So we were fortunate that they funded us from day one to get Municipal off the ground, because it really fit into their portfolio. They loved the positioning. They loved it, just everything about the business. Nobody could have foreseen the pandemic, of course. And when the pandemic hit the US and things started to shut down so quickly, I mean, that they had to really focus on their ongoing businesses. So they had to pull the funding, and the mechanics of that were, we were getting funded in tranches like most every startup does. If we hit certain thresholds, Mike, we would get our funding, we would revisit it. We were 4 days away from the next funding tranche when they pulled out. So we had 4 days to figure out how we were going to make payroll, how we were going to pay our bills. And, we had 13 employees that had left the comforts of security at bigger places to come join this wild ride. And we had to figure all that out. And it really was like living in a simulation. There are a lot of times,
business. Yes.
There were a lot of times I woke up, Mike, and it was like, is this really happening to me? Like, how did this happen? And you don't have the luxury of just being able to stay in bed and pull the blankets up over your head. So we really had to.
You do have the power.
I guess you can. Yeah. I guess you can, and then everything will blow up. But it really was. In some ways, everyone was healthy, which was great. Like we weren't in an industry where the real sickness really affected the people and families. So we were lucky that way, and we had to focus on the things that mattered the most to us, the things that mattered the most literally to the business, to keep us going, to get to the next day. It challenged our creative thinking. It challenged our resolve. And I think we came out of it, even though I think we're probably, all in, it probably set us back a year and a half, maybe, from a business trajectory, but it made us a lot stronger as a company. And I think the choices that we made during that time really set us up for much more long-term success we probably even would have had under smoother times. So,
but another, and I want to put a pin on this right here because we're going to come back to it, because I'm sure at the time you're like, this is probably the lowest moment of my life. And now looking back, you're probably like, that was the biggest learning experience, the biggest grit, resiliency building, character building experience I've ever been through. But did it really set you back when it set everyone back a year to 1.5 years? Just giving you a different optics on that.
Mike, thank you.
It
You
impacted.
chiseled away my perfectionism again. You're absolutely right. I guess who cares? Timelines are irrelevant, you know. So no, I think my expectation going in, leaving something that I love, leaving something that quantifiable, frankly,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
comparing that, just based on even before, but in the context that you just bring, yeah, absolutely, we're right where we should be, ahead of, I think, where our expectations were as far as what we think the brand is meaning to people, and just the level of connectivity that we've been able to have internally and with the people that buy our products.
So it almost added a story to Municipal that you didn't intend to be part of the storyline because of the promotion. But hey, well, you know what, that 1 year to 1.5 years and your expectations, I call that. And I wrote a book called The Everyday Warrior. The podcast is called The Everyday Warrior. It's because you, sir, like all warriors, hold themselves to high standards. But here, I want to back up, and we'll get back to this. Give people, over 3 to 5 minutes, what your background is, especially with TaylorMade and Callaway, and then who the hell came up with the idea of Municipal? I'm assuming it's you. And how did you go from the back of a napkin to full-fledged pitching it to your partners? But give us just a little background on you.
Yeah, so I've always worked in the last 20 years, worked at product-led companies that are in the workout sports space. Russell Athletic, left there, went to TaylorMade, then to Callaway. A lot of learning on all three of those experiences. TaylorMade, really dynamic time where TaylorMade separated itself from the entire golf industry by virtue of marketing innovation and transitioning from being entirely sales driven to being more market led, into Callaway, which was a full turnaround, dusting that brand off, modernizing the positioning, modernizing the way that we marketed, modernizing the way that we connected to golfers in a way to explain our difference in the market and being innovation led. So that really set me up to this experience of Municipal. And to answer your question, it really was a collaboration among me, Mark, and Lev, and others that were part of the early team on the brand. Mark and Lev had been wanting to get into the apparel space, the gear space, for a long time, and Mark was going through a transition of his own on what he wanted to spend his time and effort and energy on for the next 20 or 30 years. He had made that transition in the entertainment world, where he was starting to be more out in front, more producing, more creating, instead of just being a hired gun. And he felt that same way about this business, that he just didn't want to be a hired gun. He didn't want to just be a brand ambassador for some big brand. And he really wanted something that represented himself and something that he could kind of sink his teeth into and help direct and help develop the business and the stuff that he really is passionate about. And so Mark and Lev had this notion of a brand in the sports space, of being kind of the giving more and more people access to quality and to style that maybe they weren't used to getting. So, or making those kind of compromises. And so I love that. I really loved that mission of let's make incredible style and quality and luxury. Let's make that really accessible for the masses. And the more that we started talking about it, the more that we started to really shape what this brand was going to be in terms of the products we made and the influences that would go into it. So sport performance, because we love sports, we love athletes. Also, some luxury cues, because we love the whole experience, the luxury experience you get, the white glove treatment, the concierge aspect of what luxury brands are all about. We didn't like the exclusivity part of that, and we were thinking about cool streetwear style. And then the other thing, and this is probably because of where we were in our lives, is like, we don't want to sacrifice comfort, because at any given point, we're going from meetings to gym to picking the kids up to whatever else in the office. And we want to have comfort that's versatile among all those things. So you throw those into a pot, Mike. You just throw them in, shake it up. And I think that my experience working at kind of big companies, big dynamic places, was making sense of all of those things into a cohesive brand positioning and getting the team oriented around what it is we're trying to accomplish. So
I love how you just said that.
Long story short, who was responsible? Everyone was responsible, because this thing has everyone's fingerprints on it, including the feedback loops that we developed early on from customers and early fans of the brand that would kind of signal to us what direction we should be going after we launched it. Because launching the business is a great accomplishment for anyone, but really where the rubber hits the road is, how willing are you to have your ears be so much bigger than your mouth, and to not get wrapped around your own ego that, you have the answers for everything.
So that brings up such a good topic, but I don't know if you recognize it. I almost love it to the brand, because you're like, yeah, we wanted quality and luxury, sports performance, luxury, prestige, sort of that concierge experience. Oh, and I got to go pick up the kids.
Yeah,
without
exactly.
exclusivity. It's just
exactly
I don't want to say it's a sad state of life of like, hey, guess what? In your 30s, 40s, 50s, you have kids, you can still be the badass. And yeah, you got to go pick up the kids in the minivan or whatever SUV you got.
Uh-huh.
But so when you were looking, and you talked about brand positioning, and it sounded like you got really excited. And now you're moving from companies that you stepped into that are well established, and you're starting from scratch, which, having been an entrepreneur, and most of my companies have failed or are textbook failures, and I'm fine with that. I've learned a lot from them, and the ones that have done well are doing well. As you looked at brand positioning, what was the closest brand that you guys saw compared to what your vision was? Or was that space, Blue Ocean strategy, completely open for the taking in your eyes?
Well, for better or for worse, I think me, Mark, and Lev share this one attribute, is that we don't like to do things that other people have done. So that hurt us at the beginning. Not hurt us. That challenged us early, because any new entrant into a big space like athletic apparel, for example, it's a lot easier to be, we're this version of that, or we're the more inexpensive version of that, or the more expensive version of that. And you also will hear a lot of people describe themselves that way, of like, who are you? Oh, we're like the more masculine Lululemon. Or who are you? Oh, we're the more performance oriented Nike, Under Armour. We're the more aggressive masculine Nike, Under Armour. We're the more coastal version of Lululemon, Million Companies. And so we didn't like that. We didn't like that. We wanted to be our own thing, and we thought that if we could create our own lane and do our own thing, that would be a much bigger chance for us to succeed, because internally and externally, every play that we ran that was going towards that positioning was going to be correct just because it was our own positioning. So, to answer your question, what we really were thinking was if 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 the versatility and kind of fabric performance of an athleisure brand like Lululemon and the premiumness was going to get into a consensual relationship with Nike. So bringing the sport, performance, use of color, energy, emotion around the brand, and then that consensual relationship extended into really cool, exciting style that was driven from what was happening at the cultural level, i.e., streetwear. So like Supreme, if Supreme, Lululemon, Nike, and the final piece of the puzzle was core stuff that everyone wanted. So there's a brand out here called James Purse that we like a lot. It's a expensive brand. It's like $200 t-shirts. If those four brands like had a baby, what would that be? And that's Municipal. So, so to answer your question, who inspired us? Like a lot of brands inspired us.
Yeah.
A ton of brands inspired us. But we also thought there's a curatorial part about what Municipal is all about that we're gonna bring to the table influences from all of those things, hopefully in one cohesive package that'll be your favorite brand and a brand that you feel like you're going to want to buy a lot of because it's kind of everything that you're wearing all the time, every day. We're not fashion. We're not street fashion. You don't have to feel weird that you're wearing something that looks like you're trying too hard. It's also performance oriented, so it's going to inspire you, and it has the versatility and comfort that you can wear it every day. And we just felt like that brand didn't exist because we've bought everything. We've looked at everything either as competitors or as consumers, and the brand that we always wanted didn't exist. So rather than sit around and wait for it, let's go make it ourselves.
You know, it's okay to look at other business models or other competitors in the space and say, hey, what do they do well? What more importantly, what are they missing, and how do we fill that need? That's part of the ideation.
I mean, that's innovation.
Process.
No, that's innovation. Is and that works every damn time. If you see somebody doing something cool in another industry, if you bring elements of that to an industry that doesn't have it, that works. That works. I've been doing that for unknowingly for 30 years of having to have a job, of being influenced and inspired by stuff I was seeing outside of my little tunnel vision of my industry, and thinking like, how would we bring that into that, either like that exact business model or influences of how that they connect with consumers and do that in a similar way in the industry that I was in.
So we always believe that, you know, special operations has a sexy nature to it. That I know a lot of business leaders read books about special operations, small teams that statistically go up against larger forces and come out on top time and time again. The funny thing is, when we're in special operations, who do you think we're writing books or we're reading books about? You guys. And one of the most amazing trips I ever took, and I helped set up with a guy named Bill Campbell, who's known as the secret coach of Silicon Valley. He was the director of the board for Apple and then CEO of Intuit. But because I was born in Palo Alto, California, but we 20 SEALs sat down with Larry Ellison, Sergey Brin, Mark Benioff, Tim Cook. The list goes on, and it was supposed to be a leadership exchange. I'll assure you, we exchanged squat. We were writing down and listening to these world-class, cutting-edge leaders, the entire team, and we took so much away that people were like, well, what does it have to do with special operations? And to which I reply, every fucking thing, everything. Yeah. How they run their organizations, the best practices. I just interviewed a surfer, 1977 world champ, and this guy's ability to reflect on what he learned. And I'm not a surfer. I took so much away from it. I'm like, okay, I need to implement that in my life, But dude, I want to say, Harry, you know, it's everyone is trying to differentiate themselves, and you guys have actually proven that you have. but I'm not kidding you. 3 times in the last 60 days, I've heard people coming like, hey, we want to come on your podcast. We're creating this product or the service. We're differentiated from everyone else in the space. We're pretty much like the Uber of apparel. And I'm like, everyone is saying the Uber of this. I'm like, then that's not really differentiated. And maybe there is no true, differentiation, especially in a space that you guys stepped into that's dominated by some giants. Dude, I think I'd be the guy in the room that are like, hey, let's think twice about this because we're stepping into. Is it safe to say you guys stepped into a saturated market? I mean, that's a huge challenge.
I mean, absolutely. I always remember that saying, like, if the reason you're starting something starts with how big the market is, you probably don't have a great idea. So we kind of started with the idea, and then figured out where it was going to fit, and going after a niche that turned out to be a pretty broad swath of a pretty big market. The addressable market wasn't where we started. We started with what's the thing that we feel like is so needed by everyone that doesn't exist. Not how big is that market. The market in the United States is $100 billion. So that's pretty big. If we can just carve out our little niche, municipal sport utility gear, making the most comfortable versions of the shit you wear all the time, from the morning the minute you wake up to the time you go to bed and everywhere in between, and build a brand that actually stands for something, then not only will we build something pretty valuable, like that's going to be really fun for us to work on. And getting back to your, original, some of the thinking about how often do you work? I mean, if maybe I work all the time, does that mean that have books out in front of me while I'm sitting at dinner with the kids? No, but it's a thing that inspires me and something that I love.
There's 2 ways to approach this train of thought. Hey, you're not spending as much time with your family, but I think you're also setting an example of hard work. And if you take just a minute to reinforce to your kids, hey, the reason that daddy's working so hard is to provide a different life for you guys. And hopefully you're taking away the lessons. But you talk about a total addressable market. It's so funny. And I often hear, because in Austin, it's a startup nation out here. We try to call ourselves Silicon Hills, but nothing touches Silicon
That's not
Valley
sticking.
as much as they want to believe. Well, the total addressable market, if we just get 1%, we'll make $100 million. Yeah, good luck with that. I think that's where people get emotional. But let me ask this in truth here: who came up with Municipal, or did you guys go out to a branding agency? Because God knows, great branding agencies are freaking awesome. Oh, it was all internal?
Yeah, Mark and Lev had come up with that name because they were thinking, where is the place that everyone starts with their passion for sport? Where is the place? It's the municipal courts. And so they were, municipal golf courses, municipal courts, municipal whatever, like things that are just available to everyone. And so it was a concept that they had, municipal. What is, just the name sounds cool. The name sounds like it's been around forever. It as a matter of fact, every time that we get in front of a customer or a fan of the brand who has just discovered us, they all assume we've been around forever because the name sounds like it's been around forever.
Yeah.
And again, from a philosophical perspective, we really wanted a brand. If we were going to do something, we really wanted it to matter to people, that we wanted it to somehow change the trajectory of their life above and beyond making stuff that they thought was cool to wear or comfortable to wear. That really, if you're wearing a municipal product, we wanted that to inspire you and say something about the type of person you are. And so the name really is tapping into that part of your life where you thought if you could dream it, it could happen. And to not have any self-consciousness, to not have any barrier, to not have any past experience limit your thinking or limit your self-belief in what was possible. And we That's what it is. That's what it's all about.
Let me ask you this. When they came to you with that name, did you have a positive reaction or maybe allergic reaction at first, or did you just have to sit on it for a while?
I loved it because
did.
having been around, like I do not like, this is a personal thing. I do not like brands that don't have, the name doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I don't like fashion brands of names of people that don't exist. That, oh, this name of, William added to this sounds like a pretty cool name, and you can name 1,000 brands that have names of people that don't exist. There's some mythical scion or mythical siren song to the type of image that they want to portray. Like, that makes me want to puke. I don't like that. I can't stand it. I don't.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, you're going to get that from me. I just don't like that. I like things that have meaning, and I love names that are simple enough that you don't have to like ponder what the name is all about or what the name means. So when they mentioned that, I immediately let my mind start to wander of what that would look like in, on things, how we would talk about it, how we really could create events and stuff around community, around education, around the things that are beyond just the transaction. And I loved it. I love big, simple names. It's bold. It, again, looks like it's been around forever. And there's real substance. There's a real substantive connotation to it, and a real like kind of lunch pail-y connotation to it. It's not a sexy name. It's not tricky. It's not trying to be something that it's not. And that was what we wanted our company and our brand to be, and the people that work there to be. What you see is what you get. We say what we mean. We're honest. Our integrity cannot be compromised. We try to say it with kind candor. We're never going to belittle anyone in our company. We're never going to insult anyone in the company or externally, intentionally. But we are going to tell you what we mean. And if we say it, you can trust that we believe what we're saying and selling.
So I love that. And I'm a firm believer in you lift your partners up. You don't push them down, especially publicly. If there's something to deal with internally, you deal with it internally and then and move on as a team. Let me ask this. From the time that the three of you, Levin, Mark, and yourself said, okay, let's go to launch. And I understand just prior to launch, COVID hit. How much planning was involved? Were you guys planning this for a year, 18 months before launch?
You're not going to like this answer because you're a really practical guy. But I would say, me personally, I've been planning for it for 30 years. This
is your passion.
I always wanted to build something. I always wanted something that would showcase the beauty and the heroism of the everyday, and would also inspire people to get out of their own way, to chisel away all the bullshit and rediscover self-belief in pursuit of making big things happen. Like that now I just crystallized 30 years of probably a lot of different thoughts into what that meant. So for me, 30 years. For Mark and Lev, a similar story. Now, when did it come down to the three of us saying, enough screwing around, let's put pen to paper and make this shit happen? From the moment we did that to the moment when there was a product to be purchased, I guess, was probably around 2 years. And I was probably the holdup there because I had a really comfortable job that I loved. And, I was trying to not force myself into this binary thing of like, I either can do this or I have to leave and go do this. So I was like, okay, let me stay in the middle somewhere and figure out what does that space in the middle of those two, that binary decision look like? Try not to force myself down into the fallacy of binary choices. And And where I would say that's good advice 99% of the time. In this particular case, it was the worst thing I could have done, because it forced me into a stasis that was really unhealthy to live in between those two worlds. So I was sort of like not all that present in one and not all that present in the other. And I married really well, and my wife was like, "What are you doing? Like, go do this. You have to do this. What are you what are you doing? Are you going to sit around another 30 years trying to figure out the perfect opportunity? And let me help you understand, if it fails, you're going to learn a lot in the process. You are not going to sit here at 80 years old and regret that you never went for it. And if it fails, you have enough track record that you can go do something else. But also, let me tell you this, having known you for a while, it's not going to fail. It's going to be successful in some regard. What that looks like, who cares? If you put a number to it, then you're falling into the trap of thinking about the addressable market instead of building something really cool and special. So thank God I married her.
But here's the reason people don't do entrepreneurship is because when you got a salary, and I know I'm assuming you were the CMO of Callaway at the time.
Yeah.
That's hard to leave that for the unknown.
Tell me about it.
99% are like, yeah, screw that, dude. But it's less what I want to do and more the spouse, whether it's, whether you're a woman that's making the decision, going to your husband or going to your wife. And so often I married above my weight class big time.
Same.
I'll be like, hey, I want to do this.
Isn't that nice? Mike, isn't that nice?
It's nice, but usually I refrain for like 3 months of like approaching my wife and saying, hey, I want to leave this company and go do this. And she's like, yeah, fucking do it. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That's the answer? Because I would have come to you 3 months ago.
Simple as that.
That's awesome. So all your hard work, 2 years, you guys are trying on products. Let me ask this before you go in. Have you ever been emotionally attached to a product and then Mark and Levin, your partners, are like, yeah, we don't like it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times that happens. And it's not a. I hope they're not going to watch this. Like, it's not really.
No. This is the dynamics of partnership.
It's not really a democracy either, because if you try to design and develop anything great by committee, then this doesn't really work that way. Well, I think sometimes it can, and I think that I'm open-minded enough that to not fall in love with the toys so much, or not fall in love with the idea so much, and more be passionate about the execution and the buy-in from as many people as possible for the end product. And we try to hire that way too. So, it's one thing to hire really creative people, which we do, but we also want to make sure that we hire people that are fully bought in to the notion of value-based collaboration is what our innovation is all about. It's a team sport, and you have to hiring people that love that process. And so, there's tons of time. As a matter of fact, it makes me a little nervous when I show them something that we have come up with and they're like, great, we love it how it is. Because then I start to question, are you really engaged in this? Because that's too easy. So a good example of that, Mike, is we have shoes. We're launching a shoe in the middle of the year and towards the end of the year. Now that's audacious too. The company of ours will really launch a shoe, but we had an awesome concept that's it represents our brand so well. And you get 3 people that are passionate about shoes in a room, you're going to have 3 really different opinions about what they should be, what the technology should be, how prevalent the technology should be, what you should be using it for. So that whole process, I think, with the team and our partners that are helping us make the shoe and bring it to life, has been really, really healthy, because it sort of expands the set of data that you have going into something. So, but at the end of the day, again, it's not a democracy. Somebody's got to make the call, And somebody has to be willing to say, if this thing fails, you do not have to look at the process. You do not have to look at you just got to look at one person. And that's why I wanted to start a company. I wanted the ball. Give me the ball.
Just like Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And what's that quote from Michael Jordan? Like I've taken 9,000 shots, been trusted with the game-winning shot like 300 times, missed, and it's because I fail that I succeed. But there's 2 points right here, and usually just I do this more for me than the listeners. But one, emotional attachment, and I think this for some people who have the ability to reflect and learn, I think with age you learn to become less emotionally attached to things because you realize I don't have all the answers. If you ask 25-year-old Mike as a SEAL, like whose way is the right way, it's 100% mine. And now I see that if somebody's more passionate about something, they may see something that I don't see. And so I've become less emotionally attached. But I'm dealing with this right now, Harry. And one, I've got great partners, a guy named Andy Stumpf, who's been on Rogan like 6 times. He's got one of the largest podcasts, Clear It Hot. And Nick Cush, who's just getting into business, who's one of like the world-renowned skydivers, is we're a partnership. At the end of the day, Andy and I founded the company, but I'm the majority, equity holder.
Yeah.
Is yes, collaboration to a point. Listen to people, put your perspectives aside and try to hear what they're saying. But at the end of the day, you can't, this decision by committee will never work. And the buck has to stop with one person. And
now,
guys,
fortunately now, Mike, those kind of decisions don't get us killed where they would have when you're 25.
Yeah.
I mean, by committee. I mean, imagine will be easy for everyone to understand. Also, I should, full disclosure, I've never been a SEAL, so I just want to say that. So anything I say that's not right,
leader, same thing. No.
Can you imagine being on a mission and then having whoever was the mission leader turn to the team and say, "What do you guys want to do?" I mean, how's that mission going to go down?
Actually, Mark was in a movie where they did that, and it turned out horribly. That's a whole different subject. One, he did a great job with that film, but no, that's a key point. Is heavy is the head that wears the crown. In your title at the end of the day, even though there's multiple co-founders, is CEO, and the buck stops with you. And sometimes it's making that hard decision, which I've found that a lot of people just don't want to make that hard decision. And it's not what's best for people. It's what's right for the organization. And that's hard. Hey, let me ask you this, man. So again, we hit it early in the podcast. You guys, short of launch, COVID hits. What was the lowest moment for you? And don't everyone questions their decisions. And I know for me, it's like when I'm at my worst, I look at my wife and I'm like, I think I made a huge mistake. Did you hit that at some point during COVID and just say like, either I think I made a huge mistake or, hey, I think we're going to fail? And even people who I know are the most resilient that drive through things have that moment. Did you have that moment during COVID?
I didn't have that feeling that we were going to fail. I felt every day that if I didn't bring my best that day, that people were going to lose jobs. So but I didn't feel like municipal wouldn't exist. We were far enough along in the planning where I could see this is something that has real potential and value. What the value is, who knows? But the value isn't zero. But I just felt the keen sense of responsibility that I didn't want anyone to lose their job. I did not want anyone to have COVID and the uncertainty of not being employed. So which low days were they? All of them, because that's a lot of fucking pressure. And I think that in hindsight, what I did sort of instinctively and some consciously is I really leaned on my values hard. And I challenged myself to not be the smallest version of myself during that time, which is a natural thing to hole up and, cocoon up. I challenged myself to be the largest version of myself. And and to put myself in motion. So there's something that really inspired me years ago, and it was actually talking about being bipolar. And this person said, when you're bipolar and you have these big swings from euphoria to depression,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when you're in your euphoric part, that's the nice part is that feels really good, and you feel like you're unstoppable, bulletproof. The challenge is you feel like you're bulletproof. So
It ain't nobody
you don't
bulletproof.
weigh,
Yeah.
you don't weigh risk. You don't weigh, you don't synthesize data in the same way. You get tunnel vision. That's a problem. And when you're depressed, I think everybody can understand that. That makes you feel like you're vulnerable to everything. And this is a really simple construct, but when you are aware that you're in that euphoric moment, that's the time when you need to force yourself to slow down. So just peace and quiet and be contemplative. So, and then conversely, when you're in that depressive state, that's the time to force yourself to get into motion. And so as simple as if you're feeling depressed, which we all have those moments of feeling vulnerable and feeling whether it's imposter syndrome or whatever that really gets you that holds you back. Get into motion, make a phone call, write something down, go for a walk. Don't just sit there and let your own brain chemistry or words in your the bad voices in your brain pound you down. And so I really was thinking about that a lot during that time. It was like when I felt down and I felt alone and isolated, force myself to make a phone call a teammate, get on a Zoom call and just connect, call my partners, come up with something, think about the future, whatever it is. And that really helped me as a leader during that time, when being the leader feels alone under the best of circumstances. So
Heavy as the head. Heavy as
oh
the
my
head.
God, it's just like it's so lonely. People stop telling you things. They stop talking to you. They, so that was to answer your original question. I would say every day I was challenging myself to not cocoon up and feel like the grass was greener, and to from a personal standpoint, go back to my values, and from a business standpoint, go back to the vision of what we want it to be. And that kept me optimistic. Even in a time when there wasn't a lot to be optimistic about.
No, which makes two questions, but it's interesting you say about depression in just forcing yourself to move. If you look at national disasters, across all spectrum of national disasters and survivability, the higher survival rate is for those that actually leap into action, just keep on moving or conducting some more sort of action. In a lot of ways, it has to do with victimhood. When you're in depression, you feel like a victim, and it's very easy to stay there. Let me ask you this, because here you're built differently than most people, and you can see hardship for what it is, and that you need to keep moving forward in some way, even if that's one step forward in a way. But for a lot of the people that joined Municipal, also took risk compared to you. Did you find you had to leap into maybe explaining the vision and cheerleading or coaching people to stay on the path despite let's be honest, COVID was fucking horrible. I felt like I was back on deployment, like stuck on a base overseas that you can't leave, and it's a small base. Did you find that you had to lean on those leadership skills you knew you learned over the 30 years? Did you find you had to actually lead at a greater extent during those times?
Absolutely. And I guess I also too, Mike, I did not feel like I needed to get in front of the team and tell them that I knew how we were going to get out of it. Mm-hmm. All I really kept going back to was we've gotten it to this point because we have a great idea. We've gotten to this point because we have been committed to this. We have this thing going on that's way outside of our control. We, meaning Mark, Lev, and I, are committed to this business. We are not gonna bail on it. It's going to look different. So we're going to have to really preserve cash, which is going to it's going to feel different, but guess what? There's a pandemic here, so life is different. But we have enough faith in ourselves, and we have enough faith in the group that we're going to figure out a way to get through this and to come out whatever. If there's another end of it, we're going to figure out a way to come out a better company and a better group. And that's all that we can commit to, because I don't know what that looks like. I just know we're going to launch this business at some point, and we're going to get through it. And we're committed. That was really as simple as it got. And to remind the team over and over again that that's the case. And we didn't have all the answers, but I must have said 1,000 times, I don't have all the answers, but I know somehow within this team, we're going to come up with something that we can all get behind and keep going.
That's inspiring. So you guys have made it through COVID. You're thriving. Where does Municipal go from here? What are you most excited about in leading it into the next decade?
Got new categories. I mentioned shoes.
Shoes.
I'm so pumped up for what we're doing in that category. I'm really excited for that. I think people are going to be really jacked up about the product we have and what our take on it is. We're opening up our first retail locations this year. So we got one coming in the fall,
LA
here in San Diego, and we got one coming in LA. We have one coming in Las Vegas where Mark is. And so we're going to go from like having only being online for the most part to having maybe as many as 6 retail locations in the next year. And I think our concept, I'm so excited about that too. So it sort of like represents our brand. Like who would your retail concept remind you of? It's like, I don't think it's going to remind anybody of anything. I think they're going to walk in and think, this is the place I always wanted to exist. And then we're expanding internationally over the next 2 years, which we're really excited about. And then you'll start to see us in more places, I guess. So we feel like, just in classic terms, we feel like we've proven the concept, and it's time now to expand, and we're scaling, which brings a whole other different set of problems. So maybe have me back on in a year and see how big the bags under my eyes are. And but people are going to start seeing us a lot more.
Yeah. No. Well, first off, done. And it's interesting going to a brick and mortar. One company or business model that I've seen that's done this absolutely well, based out of Austin here, is a boot company called Tecovas, which sort of disrupted a legacy industry. But they're brick and mortars, and I'm sure you guys are focusing on customer experience. But the second you step into one of their stores, all you smell is leather, and before you know it, you've got a whiskey in your hand with one of those big ice cubes. And it was just done well, man. Are you guys trying to definitely differentiate yourselves on the customer experience for that first step they take?
That's all it is. So we don't want to be an errand. Municipal cannot be an errand. It needs to be a destination. So when you go there, we want you hanging out. And I think the cool part about our brand is we literally are the favorite brand of people from 13 or 14 to 90 years old. So you can imagine what that might look like and feel like in that kind of environment, from the types of partnerships we're bringing in to the types of programming, the types of events we'll have, because also the name Municipal, if we're there, it has to add value to the community. We don't want to just be some dumb retail location an errand that you pass by and think, I'll pop in and buy a pair of underwear. That's not what our brand's all about. So the customer experience is everything to us. We started with that. If we're walking in, what are the things that we would want to have happen in a pretty large format environment? And we're really excited about it. And I guess the other thing I would say is we know it's not going to be right out of the gate, but the one you walk into in October, it's probably going to be different in November based on what we learn in October.
And that's in San Diego.
That will be San Diego.
Okay.
And it depends on whether that one's first or one in Vegas is first. But I think people are going to be really, really enthusiastic about it.
Got it. San Diego. That's my old stomping grounds, man. So I'll have to make sure that I make
Come
it
on
out
down.
There. Harry, well, dude, you tell me if you give a SEAL discount, I'll get all the West
We
Coast
actually
teams
do. We actually do. We take care of our men and women uniform. They're really important to us, and it's such a part of being here. You mentioned it, like we're a little bit south. We're connected to the largest Marine base in the world, and we're 30 miles north of like the coolest place on earth, Coronado, where they train you guys to protect us. So if you're active duty or retired, you never pay full price municipal, baby.
We had to work that in there. No, we do appreciate the discounts, especially on Veterans Day when you get Applebee's for free. I'm kidding. Well, Harry, we end this podcast in a certain way, and then we're going to take all the guests we've had, from Sammy Hagar to Dave Batista to you.
You had the Red Rocker. You had the Red Rocker on the show.
Oh,
amazing!
Bro, he was one. He looks great for his age. Despite
I was about to say, if I can have half the energy. How old's Sammy? 74. I mean, he's something like that. Yeah.
Now, similar to you, he's got an eye for branding, and he was the first to admit, he's like, hey, I can envision a brand, and then I got to go find the people to come in and run the company. You've got both. Hey,
I only know about Cabo because of him, but that it was 30 years ago or whatever, right?
Put it on the map. The map. So we end with this. As if you were talking to your kids and you wanted to impart wisdom, what are the 3 keys to success for Harry that you would want other people to know about so they could take those breadcrumbs and possibly implement it into their lives?
Well, I number one is, if the only way to real like happiness and contentment, which ultimately will be success, in my opinion, is to follow your values. And to follow them, if you're going to follow them, you have to know what they are. So it's never too early to talk about that with your kids. And then the second part of that to me is, it's pretty easy. Dream it up, plan around it, hustle, repeat. It's as simple as that. Nothing great exists in your head. It all exists out there. So get out there, try stuff. Don't be afraid to fail. And then the third thing is, which is equally as important, is don't try to meet someone else's expectations. It's talk about fool's gold, Mike. If you try to meet other people's expectations, you're never going to meet your own. So, always set your standards higher than everyone else's, and do what you want to do. Follow your own passion, not the passion of somebody else. If you're a doctor because your parents wanted you to be a doctor, you're not going to be a very happy doctor. And if you're not a happy doctor, you're not going to be a very good one.
It's written in this book right here, is know thyself. No one can define success other than you, man. And I was just talking to Pat Williams in Orlando about it, who has a radio show. I learned from a guy named Dr. Johnny Kim, one of the most remarkable human beings. I went to BUD/S SEAL training with him. LA, first generation Korean American. His dad was an alcoholic, abusive. He actually called the police on his dad in his senior year. There was a standoff. His dad was shot and killed, but Navy SEAL, was awarded the Silver Star, then the Bronze Star, two battles back to back. Navy sent him back to college to become an officer. He finished mathematics with a 4.0. They wanted to send him back to the SEAL teams as an officer. He wanted to become a Navy doctor. He got into Harvard, became a Harvard-educated doctor. 3 years after being a doctor, applied for NASA. Out of 18,000 applicants, he was one of 12 selected, became an astronaut. All of this by the age of 34.
What a failure.
And, dude, I know. We say he's the least hardest working man in the SEAL teams, and he's still the most humble, kind, empathetic, respectful dude. But he said he had the hardest time because his dad had a very different definition of success. And as a man, he had to, I guess, rectify what he wanted and what he defined as success. And he said he wants that passed on to his kids. Don't be me. If you want to be a pianist, just pour into it and follow your dreams. I found that powerful. I do have to ask you this. Follow your values, because it sounds like a Hallmark card, and I believe it. Is there a scenario where, for expediency, just to secure success, you had to contemplate breaking your own values?
I think it happens all the time. You're in any leadership role or any pursuit, you're constantly challenged by things that are going to be more convenient. It's more convenient not to. It's more convenient and easier. It's a lot easier to just avoid telling somebody something. If you value integrity and you value, learning, and it's a lot easier to avoid those kinds of things, certainly. So it happens all the time. But if you know what they are, then the path becomes a lot easier. It's not complex, really, and you learn a lot of that. You do learn from experience, and you do learn from getting older.
Mistakes.
Yeah. And you learn the mistakes, and you kind of go back and realize the times that I was unhappiest were the times when I felt like I was really outside of those values.
Yeah. On any given day, what needs to occur for you as a man? Workouts, anything, family time. What is it for you?
Mine is absolutely getting a workout in, getting cardio in, not because it makes me look like the chiseled beast that I am. I'm not a chiseled beast, but it's the only thing I have found that gets my brain chemistry right to get out of my head and feeling like I'm going to live a life realized. So I have to do something. And I've forced myself over the years to embrace the fact that an imperfect workout is better than no workout at all. So even if it's 15 or 20 minutes of 13-minute mile pace around the neighborhood, like looking like an old guy, that's so much better than doing nothing for my brain chemistry and nothing else.
You may have inadvertently just told people it's okay to just go to the gym and be on your phone the entire time.
Whatever it takes.
So first off, leading into this question, how many hours a day do you think you work on your given companies?
I mean, I think it's what drives my passion. So I wouldn't even be able to quantify it. I'm thinking about something all the time. And when I'm at my best, I'm thinking about the things that inspire me, not the day-to-day, BS in the business that you have to be thinking about, administrative things, paperwork, tasks, knocking off the checklist. That's not really what is absorbing me in the non kind of office hours. But I would say if I'm awake 18 hours, I'm thinking about something related to the business or learning all 18, really. I mean, if learning is part of running a business, and it should be, then it's every waking hour.
So for you, in terms of staying efficient, time management, what do you utilize to stay on task? Because I know you've got a long list. Is it like time blocking, staying off social media? What works for Harry?
I have pretty significant attention deficit. So my way of accomplishing things tends to be a boat kind of rocking in the ocean a little bit. So I have to plan like the next day, the night before. And I'm also at the same time, I don't love surprises. So if I can get a picture of how the day's going to be the night before, I go into the next day a lot more calmer and a lot more confident that I'm going to have, that I'm going to add value to the business and the teams and our customers and stuff the next day. So it always starts the night before. And again, it's just like a workout. I don't have to make that perfect, an hour, workaholic, sit there. It's literally look at my phone and get a picture of what's going to happen for that day. And then also that drives a lot when I want to show up, literally show up in the office, because that's the other thing about being an entrepreneur and having your own business is is you don't have to conform to however you've worked in the past based on whatever the industry or company requirements were. You really can set it up however you feel you're going to be the most successful.
Yeah. Currently alive today, who do you respect or look up to, and why?
It's not really a person, it's a category. And honestly, it's working moms. I mean, the working moms of the world are the heroes to me. I have a bunch on my team, and it blows me away what they're able to accomplish and the requirements on their time, their emotional energy, but to also hold that their family requirements and having careers is mind blowing to me that they're able to do it. I'm fortunate that I don't have to live up to that standard.
To sacrifice all your needs for the good of your children, to give them a better life, man. I agree with you. I did have sort of a reminiscent sort of vision of Bill Murray and Kingpins, but that's a different story if you've ever seen that clip.
I have. I was looking for my rubber hand to pull that out, but
yeah. So, hey, lastly, man, what would you want the listeners to take away from this podcast?
There's no such thing as perfect, and I found as somebody that started my own company, co-founded a company pretty late in my career. I was 49. That what had kind of gotten in my way was certainly not desire, but a misconception or a misperception of what is required to do that. And I guess the big headline is whatever you bring to the table is enough at the end of the day when you're in it. But you got to just get going and get out of your head. Throw away any constructs you have that have anything to do with perfectionism, because that'll get in your way every single time of actually accomplishing good things.
Perfection is a fucking mirage.
It really is. It's fool's gold. Man. It's fool's gold, isn't it? I mean, it's. I wish this version of me could have told the 22-year-old version of me that, or the 12-year-old version of me that. That would have saved me many years of heartache.
I just had Steven Kotler on. If you know Steven Kotler,
yeah,
14 novels. Okay, he just wrote a book called Nar Country. And it's all about the superpowers of aging. And he taught himself to park ski at the age of 53, which is unheard of, within 3 months. And he was doing some major tricks. But the superpowers of aging, as he said, is 1, divergent thinking, creativity, intelligence, abstract reasoning, empathy, and wisdom. If you can tap into those, it doesn't matter how old you are. You can do anything that you put your mind to, more so than your 22-year-old self. That's great. So, Harry, last question, man. When all is said and done, and we asked this to Steven Kotler, who's the last one. He's like, I'm not concerned about this. That's fair. I beg to disagree, because it does. It does. I don't want to say haunt me, but it concerns me. When all is said and done, let's say that's 50 years from now for you in your 90s, maybe young 101. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be known for?
It could be because I just watched The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. If you've seen that show, that movie, or it's a book. But I really, and I say this to my kids, I really just want people to remember that that I was kind, and I tried to give voice to those that didn't have it. And at the end of the day, and that's what I tell my younger daughter, that every room was better because I was in it. That's kind of it. And I guess what I'm getting at is everyone's story is their own story. And if you're trying to model your life or your career or your success after something you read or the way Bob Iger did it or the way Nelson Mandela did it, then you're really missing the point, because it's only written that way because someone chose to write it that way. but really what it comes down to is the people that are the most successful and the happiest are the ones that are doing it their way authentically. That's the bottom line.
I love it, brother. Harry, I've learned a lot on this podcast, man. I want to congratulate you. Definitely having watching that series, which was a great series, and watching you struggle, which requires a bit of vulnerability. Not a bit.
I'm glad that was entertaining for you, Mike. I'm glad the struggle was so entertaining for you.
It's been. Hey, sometimes it's better to watch others struggle than to go through it yourself. But we were cringing for you.
Amen to that.
And brother, you guys are here today, and Municipal
We're still here.
We're still here. I can't wait to see these stores open up. I can't wait to see the shoe line. Of course, we'll drop the link everywhere, man. And if people can't find Municipal, the problem is you, not them, not you. So again, thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks,
all right,
Mike.
guys, this has been the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.